because we have seen, Cuckoo take Quap off lane. We know Carl can play Razor mid. We know Gabby can play Razor safe. So you can kind of toss everything around here for T1.
Absolutely. Keep in mind, John, this is one of the last series we'll be seeing of this old patch as well. So very exciting times. And in case you haven't played a pub game today and you've been, offline, it does seem like we have something with the Primal Beast coming into the game as well. John, I was in a pub today. I think it was my second pub of the game. And we just all got stunned. A global stun occurred. A primal beast sound came out. I don't know what to expect. I know you and I have a lot to talk about. Probably sometime during this game, because I hear there has been some internet connection issues going on in the Southeast Asian region. So plenty of talked about later on during our merienda pauses. But very exciting times, John. It sounds like we're finally getting a big patch. A big patch is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it should be big. I mean, I've seen people theorycraft that Primal Beast is going to be a hero. Primal Beast is going to be, a secondary map objective like Roshan. Who knows, right? Who knows when it does come in? It will be a big change either way. I'm looking forward to it as a hero. I think that's a lot more fun and more in line with what I'd expect from Dota. Still Polaris, do you take the Pangolier? Pangolier pick into Bane is a bit interesting here. I mean, we do know Force plays a mean Pangolier, and I remember what I was saying last week. My Polaris, Xavius has been making fun of Force wanting to just play Pango. So he does get the Pango, but into Bane, you already have the grip. Lane matchup, if they're expecting a Razor safe lane, isn't too bad for Pangolier. You can kind of swashbuckle away from the Link. Cooldown sort of match. So you're not always, you're going to have that up most of the time when the static link does come through, as long as you use the swashbuckle sort of defensively there. And it should lead to pretty aggressive lanes again. Like Tree and Pango is a pretty strong lane. You've got good slows, you've got pretty big hits from both heroes, and some good durability. So I think Polaris can play fast from there. They can still run Io Pango, which is not the most common combination. Overcharge still works pretty nice in a Pangolier, but it's not the ideal. It does help him stay really strong though with the regen Io provides. So you can kind of swing either way here for Polaris. For their supports, either lane kind of works.
Yeah. I guess the nice thing about the Pango pick is it does give the Bane something to think about during these team fights, right? Because you either grip the Pango during Rolling Thunder, which is generally what you want to do, but you also want to grip the Storm. So you've got this issue of who do you control during that team fight, and well, for the side of T1, you're going to kind of be second-guessing yourself now, because your immediate reaction will be, I need to grip that Rolling Thunder, but then you've let the Storm do whatever it wants, assuming you don't get caught by a Fire Blast from that Ogre. The Storm seems to be pretty free during these team fights, at least for now. Still T1, final pickup here. So we'll reveal exactly what's going on with their side of things. It's still very confusing, their draft. You'd like to see some kind of team fighting off lane here from Cuckoo. No, I was about to say Tide's still available, but it was banned out right off the bat, so no surprises there, I suppose, as we are going to have to wait a little bit longer for T1. I do feel like they're not necessarily lacking team fight, but I would like to see a bit of maybe AoE control going on here from T1. That's why I kind of went to the Tide, but naturally that was banned out.
There's not much left that does give you good AoE. Something off meta like a Centaur might be there, an Axe, but you don't really have anything that Axe really enjoys in Polaris' lineup anyway. Unless you catch up the Storm. It does give you an extra catch for the Storm. They go with the DK instead, so Blink Dragon Tail is your big one. In melee form is probably ideal, because range form, of course, dragon form, it does go out as a projectile, and there is enough time for a Storm to dodge. I like that pick for T1. It still plays really flex. That could still be Cuckoo's hero. That could still be Carl's hero. I think in this lane matchup, you'd actually want to run the Quap mid, just because you have better rune control. And we've talked about this with Storm multiple times, and we've seen it. If Storm doesn't manage to pick up his 2, 4, and 6-minute water runes and power runes, Storm has a really hard time catching up, because you really need that, especially the power rune. Like, if you find a power rune, you go for a kill, you're around level 6 at that mark, you start to snowball into that Kaya time. Polaris will go into the Drow Ranger, so much more standard. I think if you're expecting the DK off lane, which it is, it's a really strong laner to have against DK. You're not scared of Breed Fire, you have really good damage. Down the line with your level 6, you've got a lot of damage to pierce through that armor, and the matchup works. So I like that read from Polaris to go with that. They knew what kind of, they knew the lanes T1 would want to go for. And the Drow isn't here that's also really run down by a Razor later on. Like, the Razor will have to work itself up close. Drow builds into Hurricane Pike, builds into Force Staff, has a good silence, so when Razor doesn't have BKB, he's going to be held back. I think it's a good read from Polaris to close out that way as well.
Yeah, no, it seems pretty nice here. Though I'm curious, Jonathan. I'm kind of leaning personally towards T1's draft because I'm looking at the support duo of Polaris, and I don't like how defensive it is personally. It does feel like it's not very aggressive. Then again, though, I do enjoy myself an IO Storm combo. I think that can be quite deadly, and we've seen Lelouch perform very well on this Storm jump. But I'll ask you the difficult question to go into this game, number 1 of this best of 2 series. Who came out with the better draft?
It's tough. I think it's pretty even. I like that point you raised there in the draft, Mike, where teamfight control from T1 isn't amazing. It's really more single target. Polaris has wider AoE with a Treant, with a Pangolier. I do want to give an edge to Polaris. I think they should be able to play around the IO timing. They should be able to play around that relocate threat, enable Lelouch to just snowball on the Storm, hang around with that combination, having the overcharge up. Gives the Storm a really fast presence. You know, it doesn't take too long for him. You're not going to have to wait for, say, the full Kaya, even by level 6 with an IO rotation tethered up. If you charge forward and use your range properly, you will have a lot of damage to give out. So I think Polaris has a slight edge by draft, but it's rather even overall. It really boils down to just laning and how to execute. And I don't think this is not. This feels like it'll be a common occurrence. Of course, we see the all chat. Gabby's been on about some Rust skin for a while. I don't know what's up. But do you have any context about that? Like, he posted it on Facebook too. I'm not sure.
Oh, how am I meant to know, John? What's this Taiwan
I don't know. Maybe you're more informed about, I don't know, games.
Oh, good sponsor.
Rust?
Dougie seems to know what's going on. I have no idea what this sponsor Cuckoo's shouting out is. We'll have to Google it, John.
Rust.
SLP's dead. Well, Lelouch, let's not get started on that, Lelouch, because John's going to enjoy himself too much if we start talking about the crypto market right now.
Wrote the 50 cents.
Listen, John. In a year or two, you won't be laughing. When we're all driving Lambos, John, you won't be laughing.
Right, okay. All right. I'll see you in 2 years. I'll see you. I've got your number there.
You'll see me driving off in my Lambo, John, when we hit the moon, alright? Every coin's gonna moon. We're gonna moon out there.
Everything's gonna moon. You're gonna moon, your coin's gonna moon, and you yourself, Mike, will have to moon as well. We've got to see that. I'm sure it's not safe for a broadcast, but it'll be out there somewhere, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. No more talk about the crypto market, though, please. I'm very upset today. I'll tell you one, they're gonna group up down to the bottom side. Polaris Esports. They'll just take their own on the other side. In fact, never mind. Hold on a minute. Mavis wants to do something a little bit cheeky, but Cuckoo's going to beat him to it. 2-for-2 trade. Cuckoo will be on that off-lane DK. Does go for the level 1 stun as well. I suppose that is pretty standard in the meta. It has been for quite a while, as even Zephyr's going to show up now. Does go for the level 1 Nightmare and just really wants to get as much damage as possible. Mavis, he's going to cop it. Though I don't think he dies, but it is going to be a lot of damage flying out. Can they get the body blocks? Not quite, but they have enough damage. Zephyr does pick up first blood here for the side of T1, and well, I'll be frank, John, that was not something I was expecting.
Yeah, Treant's not actually that tanky. He has a lot of HP, not a lot of armor, Mike. Level 1 armor, you can just right-click him down. He had no tree line. They cut it off at the start of the game. So there was really no way for Mavis to dodge through walking back into lane. Great punishment out from T1, and that should give really solid pacing here for Cuckoo, because when it comes down to actually dealing with Natsumi, there's not much you can really do about the Drow. I think that's the big issue. So they'll try to get what they can. Really good first blood to come out. And I have to point out now, Mike, while we've got time, how could we forget Taiwan Parkus March?
Oh, of course. Oh, of course. How dare we? That's your best mate as well, John. How could you forget?
I'm so embarrassed. I'm so sorry, March. I've wronged him so many times, but there you go. March is the sponsor of Cuckoo, of course.
I had a little bit of a thought about March, but we'll leave that for later on. I did have a thought earlier about a good old March, though, John. Still mid lane. Carl and Lelouch going to be at it. Lelouch trying to man up here against Carl, but of course the Queen of Pain just has that inherent advantage. I gotta say, Lelouch doing a great job in terms of CS, as we are going to have the pause coming out. I guess we'll go to my story, Jonathan. So I had a thought to myself today.
Yes.
I was thinking about March because I saw a tweet of him. T1 was tweeting they were playing today, right? And they put a picture of March up.
Yeah.
And QO's the analyst for T1's Dota 2 squad now. Couldn't help but notice John March is looking a bit tighter in his T1 jersey recently. And as you know, John, QO and I used to go out for dinner at times with a bunch of other people. We used to have Korean barbecue a lot, and QO, I'm going to snitch on him right now, because he always made fun of my weight, always calling me fat, always rubbing my belly, as he liked to do. I mean, me and him we had a love-hate relationship, and I couldn't help but think to myself, maybe March is experiencing some insulting behavior from QO today. Perhaps.
You know, I wouldn't be surprised, especially if maybe they're not together yet. You know, they're still coming to the Philippines, Mike. So none of that yet. But when they do get together, that will be a point of contention for Mango March. Still, mid lane, as we've been seeing Lelouch up against Carl. Lelouch actually holding the lane quite well. He's at level 3. He doesn't go for the Vortex, knowing that it's a ranged hero. It's going to be hard to walk up, but he's been doing a great job with just the Remnants and the Overlord to get his initial farm, control the wave. And this slight lead is pretty darn important for a Storm. Like, he gets his water rune, he's not being contested. The 4-minute mark and 6-minute mark is going to be important for Polaris to secure that even more, but so far, this is a pretty good start for a Storm. This should lead into a very fast, high timing, and just allows you to run down early on.
Yeah. Just having a look at the bot lane, John, there was a bit of action going on here, but we'll have a look at the top lane instead, where you will see Gabby and Whitemon against Xavius and Force. It's a pretty passive lane thus far, as they haven't really made the big jump onto Force yet. I think it's going to be a little bit annoying here for Gabby, right? Because you want to go for the static link, but you've always got the swashbuckle away, as they do go for it now, but Force will immediately break it. Instead, though, Whitemon does find out Xavius, and even with the Fairy Fire, they're going to have plenty of damage. So never mind, T1 seemingly having a great old time at this top lane.
Yeah, it's the same issue you had down bot for Polaris. Like, you have strong laning cores. Your supports in certain conditions can easily be run down, and you've got those conditions here. Whitemon's at level 3, level 2 Ignite, and Force all alone, no mana.
Oh, Force just sticking around as Whitemon does stick it to him. Gabby will take another kill on the Razor, and that'll be 2-0 for him. Keep in mind, when you're playing this Razor, the faster you get that initial gold up, those initial items, the faster you can start playing. The T1, they're off to a great start here with Gabby.
Yeah, 0-3 start, 2-0 for Gabby already. Falcon Blade not too far off. And that's the point where you just feel comfy and maybe showing up in mid. Maybe playing around with where your Quap wants to move in. Playing with a push potential from GK. Of course, you still have that issue against Pango, but again, they've been focusing on the IO instead, pinning down that hero whenever they already see Tether committed. It's a pretty significant cooldown. He has no easy way to go out. And I think a lot of that focus is coming through from Whitemon. So we'll see if they find another opening. For Polaris, slower start even for Force. His farm is matching the farm of Gabby to an extent, but just bleeding those kills away on a Pango of all heroes is not ideal. You do need that snowball start. We don't have the earn up yet. It'll be coming soon. It's hard to see this duo kind of finding that kill to get initial charges, though. Like, Whitemon's pretty tanky. Very hard for them to trade directly, even with, you know, Force helping out. Like, Xavius doesn't win that right-click trade, so the avenue to find that kill onto maybe Gabby is a lot tougher until level 6 is up.
100%. Even now, Static Link is there. This time it will not be broken, and that'll allow Gabby to just take all the damage away from Force and turn it right back onto the heads of Polaris Esports, as Force is still trying to run, does barely survive, thanks to the heals out from Xavius. That was pretty much everything they had to keep that Pango alive, John. Still a very rough time now for this off lane of this Radiant team, as even bot lane there was a bit of action going on here between Natsumi and Mavis. But they're going to be just fine. Still 0-3 to wave T1. But you even look at Lelouch in that mid lane, John. He is forced to go into the triangle pretty early on.
Yeah, but I don't think it's too bad for the Storm. Again, his lane was controlled fairly evenly. He's getting a lot more farm out of this. He does need a bottle top-up, which means that 6-minute rune is going to be really important. Look at T1. They're the ones in position to contest. They're the ones making sure the Quap will pick it up, and that Lelouch is already forced to go all the way back. So he might not be able to contest those 6-minute power runes, and that's a big win for T1 if they secure that, because again, it's been an even lane for Lelouch, cutting him off from those refills, cutting him off from any potential to rotate onto the side lanes. is going to slow down his timing immensely, regardless of what happened in lane.
Yeah. Well, they do a great job of it. Carl, oh, he's going to get a regen as well. That's just perfect. Carl, very happy about this. Thank you very much, Mr. Whitemon. Got that regen ready whenever for the Queen of Pain as... Well, Lelouch, he is still finding plenty of farm in that jungle, but you are losing out on those power runes. John, we know how important those are for these two heroes. As, well, of course, Lelouch, he would have loved the regen for himself. Still bot lane, Zephyr. Gonna be chased up, Natsumi. He does get the cold arrows going, and with the multi-shot, he's actually not gonna have enough. Zephyr does manage to get himself out, and even gets the courier of Mavis, so... He gets something for his trouble and doesn't really die as he does go back onto Mavis. Now, Mavis, he'll go for a bit of a chase, but with the Nightmare there, chances are you are not going to be able to catch Zephyr. And he might find another courier here, John. And he has. Natsumi's courier go down. At least Natsumi does get the items off it. And in the meantime, Force, top lane, does end up dying for a third time. Or rather, Gabby picks up his third kill on the Razor.
Yeah, the issue right now for Polaris is your supports don't really have great rotation potential. Maybe the Treant could arguably do something mid, but you're seeing just how static they are. Like, we see Savius show up on mid to kind of help Lelouch out just a bit, but he's not really able to put his body forward. He's not able to harass out Quaff. That leaves Force really vulnerable. He's a level behind now in the Pango. Whitemon's level 5.
They'll go after him every time. Is he... What? He uses Swashbuckle.
Yeah.
I didn't see him use that. Sorry, John. Mid lane. We'll go on to Carl as Carl is about to drop. The help is there from Whitemon and Zephyr as Cuckoo shows up now. They cannot catch the storm, but they've at least got an IO for their trouble. Keep in mind, it was a 4-man rotation with a Sonic Wave being committed, but well, they've got Cuckoo here with that Dragon form. They may as well get a bit of T1 tower damage.
And the only thing that's painful here for T1 is that they don't have their siege creep up. This is not aligned with the siege creep wave, but they still do get some decent chip damage. They're not going to fully commit. You are still up against a Treant, and that is level 2 loving armor, which kind of stalls that out by a good amount. So the hold is there from Polaris, but this is starting to be a really slow start. Lelouch is still up there in CS, but his net worth has been trailing behind, and that's not good news. He's sharing farm already in the jungle. The supports are helping him out, and that leaves Force very vulnerable alone. Even Natsumi's here in the same jungle area, so they're constrained in farm. They're just not working the lanes the same way T1 is, and T1 should be able to build into that momentum they need by the 15-minute mark now. Like, we're seeing Gabby already with a Falcon Blade just rushing BKBs. We tend to see Razors do. At that point, the only hold you will have is Mavis with the Overgrowth. And it's difficult for a Treant to walk up to find the angle and get that Overgrowth off, especially since he's still level 4 anyway. So that spike is a long ways off, and I think the worry now for Polaris is when you've got an IO, it feels like there's some emphasis on getting some relocate plays. With how slow the game is going for Force, I'm not sure if they have any good ways to get that relocate and the Rolling Thunder going off together. Like, I don't see any real soft targets except for maybe the Bane and Ogre Magi, but not ideal. You want to be able to pin down some of those cores here.
No, I certainly agree. Like, it's going to be a pretty hard game for Force, even without the terrible start. But you add that on top, and it just starts to feel impossible. So Lelouch has rotated here with Xavius. They might be able to try and set on to Whitemon, and they will try to go for it. The Ogre, he's pretty tanky, but when you've got Lelouch here, it should be more than enough. And Force will take the kill for himself, and that's the much-needed golden XP he needed on that Pango. And so it's a start. It's Polaris. Well, they're going to try and push this T1 top tower a little bit, but I think if you do that, that mid T1 is just going to go down. So we'll see if Polaris wants to keep trying for this. At least for now, they are going to commit. Though Carl has found a double damage rune, and again, I think he could just try to focus down the mid tier 1 if they do keep this up, or alternatively just rotate and fight. In fact, it looks like they are going to rotate and fight anyway. Gabby's here, along with Zephyr. Is it Lelouch? She'll jump the Ogre, but Whitemon's going to be perfectly fine. They'll go on to Force instead, and with the Nightmare setup, it'll just be way too easy to catch out the Pango. There's just nothing they can do to fight back.
Now, their push is way too slow from Polaris. They don't do much damage onto objectives at this point in the game. And that just gives a lot of time for T1 to walk up. Like, they don't need to wait for much. They've got the grip ready now on Zephyr, level 6 Bane. If he manages to find himself in a good spot, your Storm's going to be really vulnerable. And it just goes back to that point. You don't have stunts in your supports. Outside of Overgrowth, you do have the Gust silence from Natsumi. You've got the roll. Like, you've got to be able to commit to stop the grip. But it's a lot of back and forth. And I think T1 is going to have an easier time in kind of taking these fights if they do break out. It does look like Polaris is taking their time to farm up now. Natsumi's just taking that triangle, taking a couple of stacks out. But it's just so constrained. Just look at where T1 is. They've still got heroes showing in lanes. You know, Kuku's still working the bot lane just fine, not under any pressure. The jungle is being taken only by one hero. Gabby's playing the top jungle. Carlos holding mid. So you're not eating into any of your other core's farms. Whereas for Polaris, we just see them grouping up a lot more. And it's holding back that build-up. And I think that stall out in the item timings is really going to hurt. Like, Lelouch working onto the Orchid feels like it might be maybe a 16, 15-minute Orchid if he's really fast, unless he finds some kills. Until that point, it's hard for Lelouch to commit in, so he's going to be playing passively too. The only real hero that might be able to make plays now is Force.
Oh, Lelouch gonna lose half his mana, and there's the Fiend's Grip. Zephyr just gonna get rid of him as Xavius, he tried to go for the relocate, but, well, the delay was just way too long. I'm a little bit shocked he didn't go for the tether overcharge, but I suppose he was worried the relocate would have been cancelled, and, well, now he's gonna die anyway. Force. Oh, he's gonna be just fine. In fact, he'll try to turn, but no, it's just a bit of a pump fake. Now does go for the real thing as Zephyr. He's gonna go for a run and might just make it. Force just way too far away to be able to close the gap. Polaris Esports. I mean, they've got one kill this far, John, but they certainly have not found the openings they needed.
It's just such a massive risk for them to have the Storm zip in like that to just secure a rune. He does have a haste, but you don't really have a target to go for. You don't have initial item up, so I don't think it was worthwhile at all for Lelouch to take such a massive risk. They maybe felt a bit more secure with this Obs ward. It didn't have high ground vision. And T1 were just in the right spot at the right time to get that done. You're going to see some discrepancies in item timings now. Kuku is only 200 gold away from his Blink. Compare that to Force's build up to Blink, which is still about 700 gold away. That's a lot faster. You're going to be able to get that Blink stun. You're not completely reliant on just the grip, and that's going to make Lelouch's game a lot tougher.
Speaking of Lelouch, there's the Orcan out from Carl, silencing him up, and they might just have much more damage than needed. There's Lelouch. Is going to go down, and now T1 can even find Xavius on this IO, and oh, Xavius, he'll be the second kill once again. You catch the Storm, you're going to catch the IO eventually. 1 to 11 now for T1. 3k net worth advantage, and they are not going to be slowing down anytime soon as Kuku even picks up the Blink.
Up and running. Blink initiation just relieves so much pressure from the Bane. It ensures your Quap can maybe use the Orchid on someone else if need be. Maybe jumping the Pangolier first is also an option now as well. So it opens up a lot more avenues for T1, a lot more angles to take. And for Polaris, it's still a waiting game. Like, the Blink is almost up on Force, 200 gold away. The Blink Rolling Thunder is going to be pretty darn big, but you still need way more in the Storm. I think that's the massive issue. And you could argue Natsumi's farming pretty good. He's not too far behind. On Drow, 1k behind, considering the state of game. Not bad at all, but our Drow is also still a ways off from any significant items. The Manta style is going to be helpful against the silences, but you're still going to need a BKB at some point. And T1 with that Blink, they're going for a smoke play.
And the BKB up on Gabby now. Perfect timing here for T1 as they do initiate, and who have they found? Oh, it's going to be Natsumi. That is the primary target you could have asked for, and they got exactly that as Mavis. Well, he couldn't really help on that Train Protector. He's going to drop. And Natsumi just getting caught with his pants down near the small camp is going to pay for it. Nobody was really around to break the smoke either, John. And Mavis was there, but not in the proper position to break. It's even top lane. Zephyr gonna find a Nightmare on the IO. They do lose the tier 1 tower, but they'll get a kill in response to Lelouch. Was even being caught out here by Kuku, but they'll go for the IO instead. A pause will come out from Polaris, and you know, John, they might need a second to talk about what the hell's going on.
Yeah, they've got to refocus, regroup. They do have their own Blink up on Force, so some Blink initiations coming true. We're not really seeing the strength of the IO here. In fact, it doesn't feel like we're even seeing the strength of the Treant Protector. I feel like they've managed to counteract the Treant really well with Razor. You can chase him through the tree line with a static link and even with a Plasma Field giving you some vision. They will go for the defense here, but the tower does fall.
Nice stun, but Gabby's got that BKB up, and he'll just go right for the TP out as they white one, but no, a nice overgrowth. Mavis does catch out the Razor, but he's going to go for the link out onto Force. There goes Whitemon, and Natsumi's backed. He does not want to go much further as they actually catch out the Treant. Mavis to drop. Force, he'll keep trying to go on, but the Nightmare is there. Zephyr in trouble, but no, never mind. They've got the Storm Spirit now. With the Sonic Wave out, they're going to kill off Lelouch another time. As T1, even with the bad fights, is still getting the positive end of things. His Force, he'll keep trying to run on the Pango, and he might just make it, but the chase is on. I hope he doesn't go back for that creep wave, and no, never mind, he has. Carl, he'll jump in for a nice, easy free kill now. 3-17, John, and the 3-2-2 dream is now alive.
Oh, we're 5 away. What a great start. I mean, if it does reach that point for us, not a great start for Polaris. It's still just not lining up. The stall out we expected with a Treant on the push, it's level 2 loving armor. They can't even max it out because they need the presence of Nature's Grasp to kind of slow down these fights, give them some more damage, and that just takes away that defensive potential they've got. And we've seen it time and time again. Their only BKB pierce is that overgrowth, so they've got to pop it early just to keep Gabby down with his BKB. But then after, you lack control for everyone else. It's just a matter of not being able to find the right targets to go on, as Mavis gets caught out solo. We'll be able to TP though, as Cuckoo is the only one around, so it does get to save his life, but their tier 1 bot does fall there, Mike. So another objective for T1, more to play with, more map to farm up on, and for Polaris, at this point, it's feeling like the Natsumi game. Just build up in your Drow, maybe try to build up in your Storm. We still need to see the Orchid. And it feels like there's not been much progression here from Lelouch, but it's been a tough game for him.
Lelouch.
And you've got 2 slow cores now just farming up.
Does back off in time, so Zephyr could not get the Nightmare into the Fiend's Grip off. You've got Mavis there anyway, with the overgrowth if necessary. Of course, Xavier's, he'll even TP down and make sure Lelouch is protected. It's a matter of whether T1 really want to go for a T2 tower dive, and well, the answer is they won't. They'll back off for now, just control that Radiant jungle and maybe find someone in the mid lane. Carl is trying to bait for his team, but nobody going to show up here from Polaris Esports. So T1 instead, they might just control this triangle and eventually just go for the Roshan instead. Though there is going to be a big smoke up now here from Polaris. A 5-man smoke, in fact, as they do rush back into the triangle, but no, they are scanned out. This could be a really bad team fight here for the Radiant. If they keep going as T1, they might bait for this. Gabby's going to show Polaris, they're not going to take the bait yet. There's another 5-man smoke out, T1. We'll head back into that Radiant triangle. Zip, Lelouch, not you, sir. Stun is there. They've got the Zalm down, and they're just going to blow him up. Mavis tried to help out with the overgrowth, but he's going to be relocated. This IO, he's trying his absolute best to get the relocate play out, but the problem is Lelouch is just dying way too fast, John.
Yeah, he has nothing. And they'll get the freebie and Xavius to clean up. 2 for nothing on the smoke, and smoke. T1 just finding everything they could ask for. They find another.
Oh no, they got Natsumi now. No Fiend's Grip even necessary here to get the Drow, as they will get another core off Polaris Esports. And John, we are 2 kills away now from your favorite time.
Oh boy. Oh yeah. It's coming. If T1 just plays solidly, we'll see. And there's still openings for Polaris. It's hard to really imagine that, considering the circumstance of the game. We haven't seen the best Blink Rolling Thunders yet from Force. You've got the Yultz up in Lelouch just to save himself from Orchid plays. But the follow-through is always there from T1. Like, if not the Orchid, then you still have the Dragon Tail stun from Cuckoo that's always on point. And Polaris are just running out of space to enable their Force. Like, we're lagging severely behind now in Natsumi, around 2k behind Gabby and Carl. Not a good position for the Drow. Storm's just getting scraps that he can find, falling behind even Force now with all the deaths that's happened. And it's more on T1 playing really good. They've just gotten strong lanes out. They managed to punish the passiveness of Polaris supports and just constantly run and gun. Like, they have this early timing they're afforded to with the DK and the quick blink that Cuckoo found. And that they don't really need to wait for much, and they might find more. They are not quite under vision though, but
Lelouch, they've been caught out again into the Fiend's Grip. There was a ward there, wasn't there? Am I seeing things? Savius? He's going to be okay. In fact, never mind. The ward was on the low ground. I thought for a second it was on the cliff. I was a little bit confused as to why Lelouch did not back off, but it's going to be another great kill from T1. In fact, mid lane, Carl, he's going to BKB up in time as Force could not get there with the stun out. Onto the tree they go. Mavis is already down as Force is still rolling away, but now Natsumi's been jumped on here by Carl. However, Carl may have gone a bit too far, but no. Polaris, they're not going to be able to go much further.
Oh. It's there, Mike.
Oh, it is there.
3-2-2 is on the board. Beautiful. T1 having a great game, bouncing back. We mentioned it before, you know, they've been a bit middling here in the groups in Phase 2. But it looks like they've managed to kick things into gear. Maybe it's down to March, you know, being responsible to charge forward.
The Nightmare is there. Lelouch, he'll take it himself as it looks like they might finally have another kill. And just as it came, it's gone. John, 4-2-2 now out for Polaris, but it's still a very, very rough game here for the Radiant. I mean, you talked about it earlier. You said it was probably just going to have to be a Natsumi game, and I couldn't agree with you more, but it's still a Drow at the end of the day. Like, if you can't protect that Drow Ranger, if you can't just let her sit at the back and right-click people, she's not going to be that big carry you're looking for.
Yeah, it takes a lot. And you already have a lot from T1 to jump that backline. You've got Quap, you've got the Blink DK, you've got the BKBs to back them up, so Gust isn't a threat. It's difficult to position Natsumi in these fights. I think he's just got to be really patient. Honestly, it feels like Natsumi's got to be the primary tether target at this point. Right now, Xavius is still playing with Lelouch because the regen's too valuable. But when it comes to these fights breaking out, you might just want to relocate Natsumi in a very good spot once you know where T1's standing. Even then, with how much gold T1 has, that's a tough prospect. Like, refresh up on Gabby, double static link, double Eye of the Storm in the middle of these fights, full BKB for Cuckoo, and the smoke play once more on top of those items. They just know where to play around. Maybe look for a pick off first before eyeing Roshan or a tier 2 into high ground.
Yeah. Oh, they're going to run right into that triangle. Polaris are looking for a way back in, but there's your blink in from Cuckoo onto the IO. Not the biggest kill in the world, but it's still something for T1. And they can definitely start to transition into that T2 mid tower now. As Cuckoo, he has popped the dragon form, and it does seem like that's what they intend. Though never mind, pings are out, they saw Mavis. And that tree protected is trying to run his way out, but Cuckoo is going to be on the chase. However, it does barely miss out on that tree, and so instead it's back to the mid T2 tower. Thing is, you don't have the Ags up on Gabby yet, so he can't get too ridiculous here, but it's still T1. They are in full control of this game, number one.
Yeah, I like the defense coming out from Polaris, though. Like, they're preventing any sort of damage being done onto their tier 2s. At this point, Living Armor is keeping those towers back to full HP. So the siege is growing a bit tougher here for T1. I think as the game goes on, you are going to get much more on your Drow. Scaling is going to be really good. You already have the Ag Shard here on Natsumi, so Hyperthermia is in play. That actually is a lot of damage, and that does hurt. We saw Gabby just take 3 stacks, and his HP went kind of down towards half. So you are seeing some good build-up here from Polaris. They just need a lot more time to get there, as we do have a bit of a pause, and you know, Polaris has mentioned Discord issues for them, Mike. The boom excuse coming out.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, John, we did have Discord issues literally just today.
Oh, yeah.
So, I kind of believe them. Kind of. But I don't think it takes that long to change the server, but, you know, you never know. Polaris, they might be having some slippery fingers here. Just trying to get to that server button. The T1, I mean, 11k net worth advantage, still not going after the Roshan. And naturally, they don't have the greatest Roshing lineup. Like, you'd much prefer most of Polaris is dead before you do bother trying for the Roshan. But they might have the opportunity to try and get that big team fight they're looking for very soon here, T1, as Polaris are completely grouped up once again. 2 smokes available on Mavis at the moment, so chances are we could see a 5-man smoke to come out, because Polaris, they need something to happen. This is just feeling like too passive of a game from them to be able to just kind of out-farm T1 in the end.
Yeah, they're definitely not going to be able to work the economy in their advantage at this state. They need much more map control. They need to be able to farm further out, work their lanes. It just doesn't feel safe. We've seen from T1 time and time again, every single time someone pops up, they're dead.
Speaking
Cuckoo on them with the chase.
Mavis Gonna avoid him as Cuckoo did not have the blink off cooldown. Get that 3-second timer going. T1 just having a look around for that fight they're looking for. They have not really been able to make that refresher or useful for Gabby yet, considering there's just been no fight ever since he got it. More TPs back into that Radiant side jungle as Natsumi's going to rotate over. Because he's working on towards his Eye of Skadi right now. And this might just be the game plan for Polaris. They might just hug Natsumi and make sure they can't come near him as he hits creeps.
That's pretty much your only play. Like, ensure Natsumi's safe. If they do jump in, if they clump up hard enough, overgrowth and the hypothermia from the multi-shot is going to do a lot of work. They will smoke up here on Polaris, going to look for an angle. Their map is pretty darkened out. They still have that one ward on top jungle they can play around with, but not much else. Like, just no forward vision whatsoever. So finding someone to pick off is a pretty hard ask. And it does look like you're really not maybe going to find something top, but it's just Zephyr again. It's just a Bane, so yeah. Even if you do catch the support out, it's not the big kill you want.
Oh, absolutely not. Zephyr, he'd be more than happy to tank the gank right now if necessary, but in fact, it looks like he might be here to set up John. This Force is going to try and back off in the same area Zephyr's in, though he does run north for now. They are right next to each other. Force running the right way, however, might actually be able to find his own way out, but now Mavis is going into that tree line. So you do find Zephyr leaving at the exact wrong moment, as I'm sure he would have loved to find Polaris Esports in that tree line, but is not going to get so lucky. And now we'll realize they were around there somewhere. Meantime, though, mid lane, Lelouch getting silenced up here by Carl, but is going to be able to just zip towards the haste rune and run his way out. They are not going to be in position to try and catch him. And luckily for Lelouch, he is quite close to that BKB timing now. Over top lane, Gabby's now rotated. They are going to catch out the Pango. Zephyr, he'll go right into the Fiend's Grip as Gabby just blinks right in himself with the static link, but Force is able to get out thanks to Mavis and the Overgrowth. Instead, it'll be the trade to drop. Forced to get out. Not what you really would have liked here for T1, but it's still... Hold on a minute, there's a nice scan out on Force. They know he's in that tree line. Force is not opted to TP yet. It's Gabby. Has the plasma field. Oh, it's going to connect as well. Force is going to try and Rolling Thunder, but Gabby, he's right on target with the blink. Force still blinking towards the north now. Should be able to get away this time. And he will.
Oh, man. He must have gotten spooked a bit when Gabby showed off that blink right at the right spot, but still had a swash and was safe. They did manage to buy out a lot of time, to be fair to Polaris. Like, they dragged 3 heroes top, gives them control in the bot lane, bot jungle, where they are farming with Lelouch and Natsumi. So that is actually a very reasonable move out from Force to stall the game out to keep that build up. But now that exposes Roshan. They know everyone else is down bot because no one responded to the movements top. This is not going to take too long with the items that T1 have. So the first Aegis will go their way, and Overgrowth's down still for a little bit longer anyway. That's your big teamfight spell outside the Rolling Thunder, your big control. They don't have a good way of contesting beyond maybe Lelouch taking a massive risk and just zipping out.
Easy Roshan here for T1. Polaris still taking that time to keep Natsumi farming. The Aegis will go the way of Carl. Right back into that Radiant Triangle they go as Mavis was going to try and scan around, but Gabby is going to spot him out, and now with the Nightmare they have a decent setup, but Mavis is still going to be able to run. I suppose Natsumi was there if they needed it. Though I think Natsumi would rather not be around if Mavis is getting jumped. He will back off, back towards the other side of the map. The T1, they'll keep going after that mid tier 2 tower now. Oh, even that top tier 2 is not safe as Mavis. Oh, he's going to get spotted. He's going to try and back himself out. They've got the vision. They've got the kill. And that'll be both the mid and the top tier 2 to drop.
Yeah, it's a lot of objectives to fall. Without the Treant Protector, you don't have to deal with the living armor. Not much that Polaris can really find in exchange. They're still working that bot lane for farm. But losing this much map control is going to be severely problematic, as they also use the Fortify. So now high ground's also opened up here for the side of T1 if they wanted to fully commit. Looks like they'll play it slow, not take chances up. Control of Polaris with Overgrowth and Rolling Thunder is pretty good in such a confined area, so they don't want to really risk it. And again, Polaris, all things considered, are still getting build up here on Lelouch and Natsumi. Slow but steady. I love the switch out here for Lelouch. He's working towards the Ags on the Storm instead of going for the Orchid Mike. So that's more control that Polaris will have once the Storm does find a farm. It's still a ways off, but eventually that will just give them so many more options, especially for the high ground defense.
Oh, absolutely. It's just something they need right now. They need some big spell to throw out to just make the team fights turn their way. At least for Lelouch, just to be able to get something out before he gets caught out. And there's that Eye of Skadi to come out as well here for our Drow. So Natsumi now, a little bit tankier, a little bit more damage. But especially the slow is kind of ridiculous with this Drow at this point. So if you get caught by Natsumi, well, at least for Gabby, he's going to be a very, very slow Razor. Keep in mind though, he does have Spiderlings up, and with the Razor, you prefer to be close anyway if you can be. So Polaris not interested in being anywhere near T1. They will just continue to drag out the game until Natsumi is at a point where he can actually fight back. I suppose this is kind of what their draft does. If you get off to a bad start, you just try to hold towers and push out lanes, but T1 is still slowly just pulling ahead when it comes to net worth.
Net lead hasn't dropped at all, so Polaris hasn't been able to close out the network gap. Force playing tag.
Force will go for the chase onto Zephyr. Blink's already been committed. Dual Scepter is going to land. They'll have the stun into the silence, and that'll be enough. Lelouch, he'll take the kill on the Storm Spirit, and they'll just relocate him back out into the mid lane. So just poking and prodding here from Polaris, taking what they can, and I suppose that's just the way they're going to have to play this one.
Play it slow, play it safe. That is a massive rotation just for Bane. But that's a Bane who is level 14, who has a Blink, Aether Lens. You know, it's still a pretty juicy target to get. Good amount of gold coming in. That swung the gold lead by 1k from 15 to 14k lead for T1. So it was worthwhile. But you are leaving your last outer objective kind of vulnerable. The bot tier 2 is going to be next tier. They're shoving in. They've got 2 waves coming in with a siege creep up. Not going to take long for Kuka to clear that. They will find one though.
Yeah, it's going to be Carl, but he has the Aegis and he has plenty of HP to be able to just blink his way out. No real way to kill him at the moment. Not if you have the lockdown. 15k net worth advantage. It just stands here for T1. Gabby even queuing up the strength, the overwhelming blink now. So just wanting that added slow when he does commit to the blink. Polaris, I mean, they know exactly where T1 are, but they still don't feel like they can actually fight into them, and I think they're just waiting for T1 to hopefully force high ground. That is not happening, however. Instead, there's going to be a relocate up towards the top lane where Natsumi will get a creep wave and a few neutral camps, and that'll do him for a little bit. Just relocate him right back afterwards.
Just keep farming, keep building up. Again, that tier 2 has fallen. They caught out Lelouch.
Lelouch. Well, T1 just being very patient for that one, and it does pay off. Lelouch, another death on the board for himself, as now Mavis goes down. Carl just getting it by himself, and in they go, Natsumi. They've broken the gap here with Gabby, as they do try to tether, but now the double ulti is out, and Natsumi just melts. Even Force during the Rolling Thunder needs to just roll back towards the fountain. As T1, they're onto the bot racks.
And with all the damage they're doing right now, it's not going to take them long. They could just go for the mega creeps here. You really need the storm up. No buyback in Lelouch. He has the Ags up, Mike, but that cost him his second shot of coming in for these fights. So they're going to have to at least take a loss on 2 racks, likely 3. And T1's got full control of the game. I mean, they have had control almost start to finish. But the angles left for Polaris are growing very limited. We talked about the strength for high ground defense. It's not there if they stagger in 1 by 1 and just die like that.
No, absolutely not. Very, very tough times here for Polaris Esports as this draft has just fallen apart in front of them.
Radiant structures are fortified.
And they've got 1 lane of barracks left to defend, but well, quite frankly, T1 don't even need to back off right now. They've still got the Eye of a Storm available on Gabby if they want it. Not that that's really important because they've got everything else to boot. But it looks like they'll just maybe wait out the next Roshan. Just play it safe. No reason to rush here if you are T1. It looks like Polaris, they're back to just holding base and probably just split pushing the other lanes.
Got to play with that relocate to get your economy up if possible. I think that's the best way to use it defensively right now. It just doesn't feel like you're going to be getting much saving because once the stuns are out, you're likely dead. T1 will go for a bit of a smoke play on the hunt here with Gabby, Whitemon, and Cuckoo. See if they find someone. Scan doesn't quite pinpoint anyone, but they're in a good position. Polaris in the smoke as well, Mike.
Yeah, smoke on smoke action, but there aren't many buybacks available right now for Polaris, and the jump is there. Cuckoo, he's found the IO straight off the bat. Meanwhile, Gabby's found Natsumi on the Drow Ranger. They've got the Fiend's Grip to boot now, and he just can't go anywhere. They are going to get wiped, and that's the GG call. It was just too easy of a game one for T1. And Polaris, I think they've got to rethink the draft, John. Especially the support duo. It just felt too defensive here from this Radiant end, and well, they were just never able to take off.
Yeah, and we saw it from the start of laning. T1 just had a really good read as to what they had to do. They cut off the tree line already for Mavis, immediately kill off the Treant when he tried to contest for runes, and from there it just snowballed. Like, you took away the potency of Treant in that matchup. Your Drow had a good time, but your Treant just couldn't help the Drow as much. Same thing with Force and the IO. Like, they needed something a bit more aggressive. They needed something that could follow through with their Storm on mid, because sure, Lelouch was actually doing pretty good in terms of CS, but he had no rune control for the 6-minute mark, and that was also the point where Carl started jumping around. He had his ult up. Yep. So maybe some more activity has to come through from Polaris in draft. We'll have to see. But T1, it looks like they've managed to kick themselves up in shape. And again, Mike, it maybe goes back to Cuckoo having March as his sponsor. March must have given them a motivational talk, let's say, to get the guys going for phase 2 here.
It may be March. We'll see, though. We'll get into game number 2, and we'll see if T1 can continue this kind of domination that we saw in game 1. It is MLP Dota and JohnXfire, though. We are going to head to a very short 10-minute break. We'll be right back with game number 2.